Okay, in this video we're going to talk about how to add a controller to Studio One for MIDI input, and we're going to talk about how to sequence drums in Studio One. The first thing we're going to do is add a track, and we're going to call that MIDI drums, and we're going to call it an instrument. And we're going to say the input is default. We're going to say output to a new instrument. But we could also select our input devices that we have added here. So I'm going to select, go ahead and select my keyboard controller. And a new instrument we're going to add, and the plugins for Studio One are called presets. So we're going to say that as our output. So these are input and output settings. We're going to hit OK. Now we were going to go over here to see our information here. So let's say I want to add a drum kit called qwerty 909. I'm going to go ahead and drag that over here into my view. And by doing so, I have this now floating window of my instrument. And by playing my keyboard, I can tell that there are notes mapped to this. If there are other things you wanted to control this with, you can go down here and select your input here. If that's not showing up, you can go over here to Preferences and add your external device as such. The QWERTY keyboard does not automatically load. You have to add that. So if we add it here, we go down to PreSonus, and the QWERTY keyboard is hidden way down here. If you click OK, it'll add it to your list of available controllers. It's a little bit hidden. But in that case, it's added here, and then you can select it from the drop-down menu here for your instrument. Once we add a keyboard controller and we verify that it's making sounds when we play a key on the keyboard, we can set up our session to record a simple drum loop. And the best way to do this is to go down here to our tempo settings way down here and make that much slower, maybe 90. It also helps to have input quantizing selected. Let me go ahead and add my little highlighter. This IQ button is called input quantizing, and that will put your input values on the grid and correct any rhythmic errors. Next, I recommend dragging out this loop arrow, this loop selector, and selecting loop down here in the transport, and that will highlight this. So if I have input quantize and I have a drum patch loaded here, I can drag any of these drum kits over here, and I've got loop enabled and a good tempo. I can turn on my metronome and hit record, and it'll give you a count off. Now, most of the time, these drums are mapped to the C1 octave of your MIDI keyboard down here to the left. And if you hit the edit button down here, you'll see it all mapped here in your window. Oops. So I screwed up, which is great because it shows you how to kind of restart. Undo will, of course, bail you out at any time. So I'm going to audition my notes. I don't know why, it must be late in the evening. I forgot which is snare instead of E natural. I played an F and it was the wrong note. So if I hit record, you can build a drum pattern. And notice that if I mess up the wrong timing on the way in, it'll correct it for me. And it's going to loop and pick up anything you do on the keyboard and add it to it. Once you get a drum sequence loaded into PreSonus as a loop, you can go up here and then select it and press D to duplicate. And it will loop it out. We can also add effects and other things to this in the mixer, like we talked about before. We can add inserts and other effects from the PreSonus library, maybe some delay. Other things that'll enhance the sound. So this is how you use drum sequencing techniques in Studio One Prime 5. Keep in mind this is free, so it's got some limitations, but this will get you going in the right direction.